Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our executive committee meeting. Um, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at 11:03 a.m. on Thursday, February 4th. And we will have a roll call, please. Andrea, if you could do the honors.
Yes, thank you so much. Interim Chair Abikoga,
Here.
Elahi,
Here.
Gibbons,
Here.
Fliger,
Here.
Tyson.
Here.
Thank you. All are present.
Great.
Are you still interim chair, Margaret? I thought you were official chair.
I am for the board, but I think for this committee, one of our items is the truth
Okay.
teller, so I'm interim for the next 10 minutes or so.
Right.
or yeah. We will go to public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on a non-agendized item? And if so, please raise your blue hand. Oh, actually, I don't have the little hand. Oh, there's nobody, so I'll close public comment. But I just noticed I don't have the controls, so maybe Andrea, will you be doing that for us if we have speakers? Great.
Yep. Thank you.
Great. So we'll go to the consent calendar, and we have one item: the minutes from the November 23rd, 2020 meeting. Are there any changes or comments on the minutes?
I move the minutes.
If you can hold that thought, let me just go quickly to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment on the consent calendar, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, it's *9, I believe. And I don't see anyone, so we'll bring it back. And we have a motion by member Gibbons. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second it. Any other discussion on this? If not, could we get the roll call vote, please?
Thank you. Interim Chair Abikoga,
Aye.
Elahi,
Yes.
Gibbons,
Yes.
Fliger,
Yes.
Tyson.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. We go to the regular calendar. Item 2 is our CEO's update. Here he is. Take it
Thank
away.
you, Chair Abikoga. Pleasure to start our year with the Executive Committee, and just maybe a few kind of updates on what I'm thinking about and where I see us going for the next 6 months or so, just in terms of some larger trends. One is we have 5 new board members out of 13. So that's quite a bit. And we have, I believe, 8 new alternates out of 13. So if you add that of the 26, we have 13. So it's about a 50% turnover. And I believe that this year we'll have more of our alternates also serving on committees, which is quite different than how we've operated in the past. So it's just one of those things that we as a complete board and staff would need to be cognizant of and engage in. So that's one from, I'd say, the board staff, board governance and effectiveness. We just need to be cognizant of that and engage. Second, over the last several years, we've been in very good financial conditions year to year, where we've been able to set aside adequate reserves that has got us to 2 credit ratings, investment grade credit ratings. But every year we have talked to you when we've talked about rates and reserves, et cetera, saying, here are all these uncertainties, things could go up, and that's why we have reserves, et cetera. So we are going into the next couple of years into a period. So the headwinds have arrived, so to speak. What we've been talking about and what we've been preparing for has kind of arrived. So it's a little bit of a change in how we'll be talking about things. And we'll come to this when we talk about the rates presentation. For example, for the first time, we'll start to get from being in the black to slightly going into the red on a current year basis, but our reserves will be able to get us through. So that's another kind of trend when you think about just the next 6 months to a year. Those would be some things that we'll continue to look at. The third item, which in my mind is the most important to carry out our mission, is staffing. We are in a place today where we've had a few employees who have left us. So from last year, for example, we had Don Eckert leave and we had an interim for a while. And Amrit has been with us, I think he's coming up on 90 days. We've had Eric Acedo has left to go to Pioneer Community Energy. John Supp has left to go to South Carolina. He'll be leaving officially in April, but essentially he's on his way there right now. And so he's going to be working half-time for us on a very specific one-off project. We've had 2 positions that you approved for Monica's department. We've had a lot of difficulty in hiring. It's a very competitive position. And so we actually have one of those positions, we have a final interview this afternoon. So that's basically, and then we have Don Bray has a position too. So we have about 7 positions that need to be filled. When you think about our total staff size, which is approved of 31, it's close to 1 in 4 that needs to be filled. So there's a bandwidth issue, so that's a high priority for us to make sure that those positions get filled. And the reason I'm bringing it up right now also, especially with the exec committee, and I'll bring it up at the board meeting too, thinking about the next year, right? So all this is like, hey, we've got to move our business forward. At the same time, there are lots of demands for whether it's new programs, expanded programs, et cetera. So those are the things on my mind that I wanted to bring to your attention, which are more trends versus anything specific I have for you right now. So I'll be open for questions on any of those, but I'll be updating you as we talk about whether it's rates or mid-year budget update, et cetera. The only other thing I had on the CEO report is to actually ask Melissa Charles, our Director of Policy. I'd like her to give you an update on some recent developments on the legislative front. But before we go there, I see that George has a question.
Yes, because I wasn't sure if that was the gap where you asked if we had questions. Then you moved on so fast, I'm too slow raising my hands.
Perfect.
Hey, your issues with hiring where is it because other CCAs are behind us and are kind of fleshing out and creating their organizations, creating more competition than we would normally see, or can you judge the issue from that perspective?
Yes, and it's a yes and literally. Yeah, this is going to be fine. We had one finalist who told us yesterday that she accepted a job with another CCA just yesterday. So we were going to have the final interview with her today, and we had 2 people on that. So yeah, so there's quite a bit of competition for that. And some was just, we were unable. So for example, when Amy went out to hire, she had a couple of iterations, was unable to hire people who were either taking other jobs or they had certain requirements that we couldn't meet. Monica's done, and she's done 2 rounds for the principal power analyst. So one of the things that Amrit is looking at, Amrit and Kevin, is kind of like taking a bit of a holistic view of what do we need for our staffing now and in the long term, because we have a few strategic initiatives that require some staffing, some very sophisticated skills. So we'll share that with you in the March board meeting too.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions, so I'll hand it to Melissa to give you an update.
Hi, everybody. Andrea, I have a few slides. As Bruce said, I wanted to talk about some proposed legislation that's on the horizon. This is specifically a legislative bill related to fair access to legacy energy resources. Hopefully that piques your interest. Next slide. So just as an overarching sort of summary, this is proposed legislation by CalCCA that we've been working closely with them along with the other CCAs. And as background, I just want to give some context for the problem we're solving for. And so basically, as you all know, CCA customers share cost responsibility for legacy resources purchased for prior to customers' transition to CCAs, and that those costs are recovered via the PCIA rate. The problem is that only IOU customers have the right to access certain benefits of these resources. So when you're thinking about things like resource adequacy and getting credit for resource adequacy or greenhouse gas-free energy, those benefits, those credits go only to IOU customers and CCA customers don't receive credits there. In 2017, the CPC began to sort of address various PCIA issues, including the IOU's portfolio management and optimization. And this is through a pretty extensive working group process where the end result was CalCCA, Commercial Energy and Energy Management Provider, and Southern California Edison coming to a consensus solution to address these inequities. However, the PUC, I guess due to other competing priorities, has not addressed this. The consensus solution, I believe, happened early in 2020, and the PUC is still not addressed this at this point. So we are seeking a solution via legislation. And so CalCCA proposed a bill that basically reflects the elements of this consensus solution with Edison and Commercial Energy. Next slide. So basically what the bill does is it does four things. The first one, it provides all load serving entity customers equal right to receive legacy resource products that are procured on their behalf by IOUs. And they would be offered in proportion to the CCAs in proportion to their load share if CCAs pay the full cost of those products, if customers pay the full cost of those products. It also requires the PUC to recognize the value of greenhouse gas-free energy and any new products in the same way that is recognized for renewable energy and other products that are currently recognized. It also requires the IOUs to offer any remaining excess legacy resource products not taken by IOU, CCA, or direct access customers to the wholesale market. And it also requires each IOU to transparently solicit interest from legacy resource contract holders in renegotiating, buying out, and otherwise reducing costs. And so overall, this package, the whole point is to just manage these costs to optimize portfolios based on older resource contracts that were procured from CCA customers prior to when they moved to CCAs. I think that's my final slide, but I did want to tell you where we are now. So CalCCA was looking for an author for this bill. Senator Portantino agreed to author this bill. And it's not yet introduced, but when it will be introduced, it's going to be a very short bill with just intent language, very quick intent language. The final date to introduce bills is February 19th, so we should see something incoming in the next couple of weeks. But we do have a far more fleshed out bill language that will be included into the amended bill later on. I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Actually, before I see if there are questions, the last thing I do want to say, the reason we're bringing this to you is that we do want to socialize this broadly and get a broad coalition of support. So the CCAs are working with CalCCA in terms of figuring out outreach, and we also encourage board members to also just begin to sort of absorb this and socialize this. It's early days yet. There will be more information in terms of language and the amended language and the details of the bill, and I'm happy to provide that offline. But I did want to just flag this for you, and I'll also flag it in the board meeting as well for the larger board, so that you guys know what's going on. And now, see if there are any questions.
I see
George?
hands.
Yeah, I think I understood the points that you raised, but I couldn't tell the magnitude. Like, are these really significant waves on our landscape, or are they just ripples?
I think, Grease, feel free to weigh in here. I do think, like, if we were able to get this through, I think it would be more than a ripple. I think overall it's a sort of a structural change in terms of how we would be able to, how these benefits would be able to count towards reducing our PCIA. So I do think it's important. I don't know if I could quantify it, but I do think it's important. It's more than a ripple.
So that's a great question, if I may add, and it's actually, we'll maybe get ready to answer that question in more detail at the board meeting. Also at the ad hoc ledge committees, we'll bring this back on a regular basis. This is kind of a big deal because not only will it's also going to remove uncertainty, right? This PCIA is kind of a black box right now, and the value of the resources gets determined based on market prices from 1 and 2 years in the past. There's a black box around that PCIA, and our customers are paying for it. So it's kind of like, well, if you're paying for it, just allocate it to our customers directly. And so that would take some of the volatility out of the PCIA. So I think it's definitely it's more than a ripple and worthy of moving forward. So this is going to be a statewide CCA priority.
Thank you.
I thought I saw Liz and Javed, your hands up. What did you have questions or comments? No? Okay.
Yeah, I think they've been answered. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for the report. And yes, well, just call upon us when we're ready, when you're ready for us to mobilize.
Well, that's so,
Great,
Margaret.
thank you so much.
Yes, Lisa.
So that's my question. And I actually thought Liz was going to ask this question. I was waiting to see what her question was. What do we think the opposition campaign will look like?
That's a good question. CalCCA has reached out to PUC to flag this for them. I don't know if there'll be pushback there, but it does call upon the CPC to do certain things. So we'll see how responsive they are. I think they do understand the urgency about this issue and why we're moving to the legislature with it. There may be pushback from the IOUs with regards to this as well, but we'll have to see once things become more public what's happening. And I'll definitely continue to just keep you guys informed in terms of any sort of feedback we get, both positive and negative, about this bill. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. That was a nuance. In terms of the IOUs, I do want to actually say one thing. So this is a consensus proposal between Edison, Commercial Energy, as I said, and CalCCA. So it may not be all IOUs. It's a more nuanced answer than what I just said earlier. So yeah.
Liz, was your hand up? Oh, okay. I actually had a question. Is there a likelihood that the PUC would rule before the legislation would get introduced and move through the legislature?
That's a great question. So we were really hoping, so this proposal has been sort of baking and cooking through the fall. And we were saying, we hope it's rendered moot by the PUC. And so potentially, yes. Potentially, yes. This could be, often bills are proposed and that, moves things along faster on the regulatory level. So it could happen, but potentially not. So yeah.
So it's kind of like a guarantee or just sort of reinforcement in case.
Yeah.
Definitely. Great.
So
thank you.
Thank you. So I just have one last update, which is we have our new board member orientation meeting. It's being kicked off tomorrow. And of course, any of our existing board members are welcome to that meeting. And we have noticed it as it is, we have enough members that may get a quorum. And I'll just give you a preview that at least after 1.5 hours for 30 minutes, we're going to have Rod Sinks and Howard Miller provide an update on board governance. So we figure, having a board members actually talk directly to board members, it's a different kind of connection. So there's going to be some of that too. And they have an exciting presentation put together, actually. Thank you.
Will it include Rod singing?
No, that whole, yeah, the video that he made with staff was just priceless.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad that they're continuing to stay engaged with us. We'll probably have to come up with some title for them eventually.
Emeritus, yes.
Yes, the Emeritus Council. All right. Well, thank you for the report. I guess I should check. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment on the CEO's report? If so, please raise your hand or press *9 on the phone. I see Hung Wei in our attendee box. Welcome, Hung. I don't see any, so we'll close that item and go to item 3, the election of the chair and vice chair for the executive committee. And is this Andrea? Is that you?
Yes,
Thank
you. As we briefly talked about in the beginning of this meeting, Director Abekoga has stepped in as our interim chair of this meeting, being that, of course, Howard Miller and Nancy Smith are no longer on this body. So this is to have the committee decide who they would like to serve as their chair and vice chair for 2021. Traditionally in the past, it has been the chair and vice chair of the board, but it does not have to be that way. There is nothing that states that that is a requirement. So just letting you all know that. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, Director Fliger.
I move to nominate Margaret Abekoga as our chair.
I'll second that.
If I could comment, actually, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I would be happy to do it, but I actually wanted to nominate Liz Gibbons and was hoping to get support for her to chair this committee this year. So I guess I will decline and then nominate Liz Gibbons.
And I'll second that. I'll second the Liz nomination to be chair.
Thank you. Is that okay with you, Liz? Great. Any other nominations or discussion? And I just wanted to say, I appreciate it. I've done it before, and I just want to move the succession planning going. So I just think it would be great if Liz would chair this committee. So, if not, I'll go to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Actually, I'll take for both chair and vice chair public comment at this time. Please raise your hand or press *9. And I don't see any, so I'll close public comment, bring it back to the committee. And any other discussion? If not, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Director Gibbons.
Yes.
Director Fliger.
Yes.
Director Tyson.
Yes.
Director Elahi.
Yes.
Director Abekoga.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously for Director Liz Gibbons to serve as chair of the 2021 Executive Committee.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Gibbons.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'm going to hand it over to you now for.
I was afraid you were going to do that. Thank you. I think, Andrea, we next do the vice chair.
That is correct.
I would take nominations from the floor for vice chair. And Nisa, Director Flagor.
I nominate George Tyson to be vice chair.
Don't look at me like that.
So we have a nomination. Is there a second?
Hey, Margaret, did you say you didn't want to be vice chair either, or what?
Oh, yes, I'm fine not to be anything. Yes, and yeah, I'm happy to second George's.
I think Nisa would make a much better, oh, definitely a much better vice chair.
I think all of you would be great, honestly.
This is a growing opportunity.
Really.
So we have one nomination for Director Tyson with a second. And do we have any other nominations from the floor? Do we have any public comment? Seeing
Public comment.
comment, we will close this item and bring it back to the board for a vote, please.
Thank you. Chair Gibbons,
Aye.
Director Flagger,
Yes.
Director Tyson,
Yes.
Director Elahi,
Yes.
Director Abekoga.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously for George Tyson to serve as our vice chair of the 2021 Executive Committee.
And congratulations, Director Tyson. All right, and then I've got to switch this back so I can see the rest of the meeting. And we would now move on the regular calendar to item number 4, which is selecting a regular meeting schedule for the 2021 Executive Committee meeting. And this is also an action item.
Thank you, Director Gibbons, excuse me, Chair Gibbons. So this item is for you all to have a discussion on when you would like to have our meetings for 2021. The 2020 schedule was the 4th Friday of the month at 8:30 a.m. But again, this is based on all of your availability. So this is a discussion item for action to set our schedule.
Let me speak first and say that I have a standing conflict at that time on a Friday, and it's one I'm very proud of. I've been a regular volunteer gleaning for West Valley Community Services. I have a grocery pickup job, and I have not missed 1 week since the pandemic started. And so it's very interesting. It's a big deal to me to be there for that.
So it's a very flexible date. It really is to our convenience. And last time it was because I think one of the directors had a teaching position at West Valley College and we worked around that. So it's up to us as to what works. Generally speaking, mornings are easier for people. I'm pretty flexible. Does anyone have any other suggestions or limitations?
I'm very challenging here. I teach at Berkeley on Tuesdays and Thursdays only in the fall. So it's not an immediate issue, but from August to December, I have that. And I will say that I'm free starting at 10 a.m. on Fridays, and that's a very good day for me.
Does that work if we ever go back to real life?
Looking at the 4th Friday of the month.
That's what I'm just trying to check out here. We usually
That would work for me if we were looking. So Fridays are good days for me in general. And 10 a.m. on the 4th Friday would work for me. That's what we're proposing.
Yeah, 11 works a little bit better. I have stuff going on in the morning usually.
11, okay.
So 11 will work.
Fridays are good.
Yeah, Fridays at 11, I have a meeting that is difficult to change. So we can't do anything before 10, I think, for Director Tyson and Director Flagor, nothing before 11, right? I heard you say.
No, I am pretty flexible on Fridays.
I had that issue with 11, but Thursday works for me before at 10 or 11. Friday,
Okay.
no problem.
So,
If you want to go to a Thursday, then that would work. Was that a problem for George?
Yeah, that's why I'm sorry I'm so troublesome here. Tuesdays and Thursdays from August to December. So if you wanted an interim situation or for the first half of the year, if that would work, the Thursday is not a problem for me. But if you want to set it for the whole year, then that would be.
Yeah. But
Could we go later in the day on a Friday? So maybe 1:30 p.m.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm stuck between about 12 to 2 o'clock on Fridays.
Okay.
12 to 30 on Fridays.
2:30 on a.
Yeah, 2:30 would work Fridays.
So I just wanted to check in with staff. Traditionally, we've tried to have these executive meetings 2 weeks before the board meeting. So staff had time to prepare. And then if we had any comments, they had an opportunity to work on those. So Director Tyson, did you say Thursdays didn't work?
That's right. I mean, due to the commuting issues, which presumably I'll have again, to get to Berkeley, I'm pretty much,
Hopefully.
yeah, I'm pretty much booked up those mornings, actually the whole day.
Okay, so yeah, the challenge on Friday afternoons is that I do have a quote unquote backpacking group that typically tries to do stuff, but I can make it work. So we want to try for the 4th Friday of the month at 2:30.
That's fine.
Okay with me?
Staff, does that work for you?
I think that would be fine, yes.
Okay. All right, we're putting it in our calendars as we speak.
Thank you. And I will review to see if any of these dates have any conflicts with holidays, et cetera, and I'll bring that back or bring it to your attention.
Yeah, that always makes a tough.
Yeah, so this is starting in March? Or this month you're going to have a meeting also?
26th,
March
We
26th?
have a meeting on the 26th,
February 26th.
right?
Are we starting on February 26th? Because that's what I'm entering.
Yes,
Yes, we would start in February this month.
so that we would be prepared for the March meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, everyone. Do we need a vote on that? I think we do we not?
Yes, if we could, just to make it official.
May we have a roll call vote with the 4th Friday of every month as being the executive board meeting at 2:30. And there might be a few tweaks if it's a 5-week month. But I think the fourth Thursday will probably work.
The 4th Friday.
Friday, sorry.
It's okay. And did we have a motion? Did somebody make the motion?
You want to do a public comment check first?
You want me to run the meeting correctly, don't you? Public comment, please.
No hands raised.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. Are there any further comments from the board? Seeing none, there is a need for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 4th Friday of each month at 2:30. That's our regular executive.
Tyson will second.
Tyson will second. Thank you very much. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Gibbons,
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson,
Yes.
Fliger,
Yes.
Elahi,
Yes.
Abekoga.
Nope, aye.
Thank you. That carries unanimously.
Thank you. And returning to the schedule, we are the agenda here, which just slid by here. We are on item number, sorry, 1 sec. I'm going to scroll here. Item number 5, the 2021 board meeting, summer recess and options for meeting start time change. Yep.
Thank you, Director Gibbons.
Presentation.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody. So this is a bit of a 2-part item. So we'd like to discuss a possible summer break, if you will, for 2021 for both this body in addition to our regular board meeting, and also to discuss options for a potential time change in our regularly scheduled board meetings. So first up is the summer hiatus. So we've had a 1-month recess since 2018, which seemed to go over pretty well with everybody. So for 2021, we're suggesting July. If you all would support this recommendation, we would put this on our consent calendar, for next week's meeting. And again, if there is anything that comes up in the month of July, we would of course call a special meeting if there was business to be addressed. This doesn't mean that we cannot have a meeting. It's just kind of a placeholder for everybody to have a summer break. Moving on to the second part, proposed time change to our board meetings. So this is something that was brought up in November by one of our board members to possibly explore changing the start time of our regular board meetings, being that they're at 7 p.m. Some people preferred to maybe start a little bit earlier. So we did want to bring this to you all to get your input and your feedback on this to see if there is a desire to change the meeting time, and if so, under what terms. As you're all aware, we've been doing virtual meetings for almost a year now, and we will likely continue virtual meetings through the governor's executive order through this pandemic. So just something to keep in mind that we will likely be virtual for some period of time. So when we were thinking about if we were to change our time, we wanted to reach out to other CCAs and see what time they have typically their board meetings. Again, this is just board meetings and not necessarily their committee meetings. We, of course, have a majority of our committee meetings during the day. So that's also something to take into consideration. But for our CCA partners, a lot of people have daytime board meetings already. You'll see there's about 3 of them that have 5 p.m. or later. And one of the questions that we asked of them is if they had changed their meeting times based on virtual meetings. And the only group that had responded that did was EVCE, and they moved their meeting time up an hour because their meetings were running a bit long due to the virtual setting. So EVCE is the only group which moved their meeting time up to 5 p.m. instead of 6. So we developed some scenarios of what we could do and if that would cause maybe some difficulty for both our members in addition to members of the public. So first scenario that we thought of was if we started earlier than 4 p.m. We felt that maybe public participation would be a little more difficult if, say, folks have time commitments during the day between 9 and 5, they would not be able to participate in these meetings in addition to our directors who have time commitments. Of course, because it's earlier than 4, it would be during the daytime, so fatigue from a long day would not likely be an issue. Scenario number 2, if we were to start at 4 p.m. or later, so a little bit earlier, public participation, we might have some difficulty, but it's later in the day, so maybe not. And same with our members who have 9 to 5 commitments, it would be an hour away from their job once a month. And fatigue from a long day would not be an issue because it's a little bit earlier. So likely our meetings would not run as late. And scenario number 3, of course, is if we did no change in start time and we kept it as is, public participation would remain with no interruption, in addition to those with time commitments during the day. And fatigue may be a little bit difficult because it can be a long day for some folks. So the options for discussion based on these scenarios are to propose that meetings occur on the same scheduled day. So we wouldn't change the day that these occur, it would still be the second Wednesdays of the month, but at an earlier time, or we would leave this meeting schedule as is with no changes in the time, and they would continue at 7 p.m. or anything else, any other suggestions that you all might have. So wrapping up this item would be to 1, recommend a 1-month summer hiatus from our board and executive committee meetings in July, in addition to making a recommendation for board action to either approve a new regular meeting time or to leave our regular meeting schedule as is. And with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion for you all.
Thank you, Andrea, for a very thorough presentation as always. Do we have questions of staff? Yes, Nisa, the director.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to clarify, and thanks for that presentation, Andrea. It makes sense that we're thinking about this. Is this proposal solely for during the period that the governor's order is still in effect? Because my support and thinking will be different if this is even post going, the COVID world reality.
So we were imagining that it would be, maybe one of the things that we could call out is if we're proposing an earlier start time, that it would be through the governor's executive order.
Okay, because if it's not, then I'm not supportive of having it before 5 p.m. because there are members and future members who will have 9 to 5 jobs who may not have that flexibility to leave their jobs earlier. And so we want to make sure that the start time accommodates everybody, including commute time. So, you know, if it's not restricted to the period under which the governor's order covers, then if we want to start a little bit earlier, I could support starting maybe at 6, just to give people coming from Morgan Hill, for example, time to commute up, depending on where, you know, where we're hosting our meetings. So that would be my primary concern.
Thank you, Director Flagor, and Director Elahi, and then Director Abikoga.
I assume it's we can suggest a different time later on if it becomes appropriate. So this is not like it's not like cast in stone. And we can always suggest different one. The board would obviously have to approve it. 6 p.m. I think is a better suggestion. I might even say 5:30 would work because it does get to be a long day sometimes for us also. And I also want to look at staff consideration for the staff because they've been working. They work all day unless Gish gives them the day off on executive committee meetings or on board meeting days or not, which I doubt. He probably makes them work 24/7. So for the staff, it might be better if they can start sooner.
And Director Abikoga?
Thank you. Yes, so I agree. Earlier would be great. 5:30, 6 o'clock sounds good. I guess my question was, does that satisfy the requester of this change, the concerns of that individual?
So maybe, so this was primarily brought up by Director Ellenberg. So I don't know. So that's why we laid out these different options as to having, having the ability to discuss it with the entire board also. One note kind of getting to addressing Nisa's question or comment about people who have 9 to 5 jobs. All our committee meetings are during the day. So that's one consideration that we have already. And that's why we kind of chose like 4 p.m. tends to be toward the end of the day. It allows for a little bit more flexibility. And we were really struggling with within the pandemic and post-pandemic. So I think we kind of came to, maybe this could be done temporarily. But I think also, even at the SVCE staff level, we are not going to go back to a 5-day a week in the office again, even post-pandemic. It is going to change. And I think that's what we're seeing across Silicon Valley, across the country. There's going to be some balance here. And just in informal chats with some board members, there was some comments about even when we get back to normal, we may want to have some virtual meetings also. So I think there's lots of, what should I say, options, but maybe one thing as we talk about it, we can tee up a variety of options. But I think it'll be good to at least decide what to do for the pandemic period at a minimum. So
thank you, Director Tyson.
Thank you. And by the way, Andrea, I really appreciated the presentation because it helped identify who are our stakeholders and what matters, and the whole thing about public participation and our purpose is important. And then the other thought is kind of a message for Chair Abikoga to say, you run a nice tight meeting in 90 minutes. It doesn't matter that much, does it? But I can't put that all on you, much as I'd like to. And so, when I was asked about this, I said I'd rather keep it in the evening because my days are kind of crowded. But I will say I'm relatively agnostic, relatively it's not that big a deal for me, especially if I look at, I know that the second Wednesday, I'm pretty much free from 4 o'clock on. So I'd be open to any of those things.
And I do think,
go right ahead.
And I do think if we are thinking solely during the pandemic, that makes a difference. I know in our council, we have one council member who does not control her schedule. And so, for example, this was my first year where I got to appoint people to different boards and commissions. And when I looked at her form, you know, there were some committees she actually said, I would love to serve, but I can't. You know what I mean? So I would want to set it at a time where we do have council members from different cities who really would love to serve on the SVCE board and couldn't just because we have it at an too earlier time. But during the pandemic, I know it's different. It's easier to just, most people are home. Some people are essential workers, so they still have to go to their jobs. So that's just a big consideration for me, making sure that whatever time we set will work for any and everybody, regardless of where they work and if they set their own schedules.
Yeah, thank you, Director Flygore, because that's a lot of my concern, frankly, is making it available to people. I do think that we do get Zoom fatigue when we have meeting after meeting after meeting. So like this morning, I've had an hour-and-a-half meeting before this one, and I've got another one coming up after this one. So I think we have to be sensitive to that. I would like to offer a comment that I think we need to be respectful of the audience, the public participation, and I thought that was a very relevant information provided by staff. I would prefer myself to start the meetings no sooner than 6 p.m. I do think we have an excellent track record of having efficient prepared presentations, and the meetings rarely last 2 hours. So I think starting at 6 is a reasonable time frame that I think would work for the majority. I'm flexible, but my recommendation would be 6. So yes.
So I'm just thinking, so I'm thinking about bringing this up to the board. So if this is kind of where the exec committee is headed, so it'd be 6 p.m. during the pandemic period, or are we
So
thinking
that's
just
actually,
6 p.m.?
right. I was just
Yeah.
going to poll the board here.
Thank you.
So there's a little bit of flexibility during the pandemic, but I did think I heard that for the pandemic, at least 6 p.m. seemed to be okay with everyone. And I just wanted to take a poll. I'm trying to narrow the recommendation from this group for staff to bring to the board. So Director or Chair Abikoga?
Yes, I mean, during the pandemic, I actually would prefer even earlier, but you know, I can go with 6.
Okay, so earlier is a possibility for you. Director Tyson?
I'm flexible. 6 is fine. Earlier would be fine too, but no earlier than 4.
And Director Elahi?
Yeah, I think 6 is fine. 5:30 I would prefer, maybe a little bit better. And I would probably do it as that's a proposed time, but it's subject to review after the pandemic. So if we don't review it, we don't have to go back through this whole thing. But if there's a need to review it, then it should be subject to review, rather than just saying it's going to have to change after the pandemic is over.
Thank you. And Director Flygore?
During the pandemic, I'm fine even maybe going 5:30. And then post-pandemic, we can reassess. I want to go back to Chair Abikoga's question about the person who raised this issue. Was she looking for even earlier? She was, okay, then, well, 5:30 is much earlier than 7, so that should help. But I'm not supportive of going earlier than 5 o'clock.
So what I'm hearing is a pretty good consensus for during the pandemic to do 5:30. I am hearing that it is possible that the 5:30 would be too early post-pandemic when we have commutes and different things, particularly from the South County, as well as from our regular jobs. So is there anyone? I'll take comments from the public. No comments from the public?
No comments.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the executive committee to make a motion.
Move that the meeting schedule be set for 5:30 p.m. on this is second Wednesday of every month, and that will be the schedule during the pandemic. And once the pandemic is over, it'll be brought back to the executive committee to review to see if that schedule needs to be changed.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
May I add to that motion? I think we want to decide on the July cancellation. Might as well do it at the same time.
I was going to do it separately, but we can do
Oh,
it.
okay. All right. Yeah.
Let's do it separately. I think that's easier. Okay, so we have a motion and a second by Director Abikoga. And may we have a vote on that? We can do separate votes, can we not? Yes, okay.
One moment, please.
Are you there?
She's working on it. I can
Oh.
see.
Sometimes I freeze up and I'm sure.
Thank you. No, I'm sorry. Who was the second of that motion?
Abikoga.
All right, we are ready. Chair Gibbons,
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson,
Yes.
Flagger,
Yes.
Elahi,
Yes.
Abikoga.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously to recommend our regularly scheduled board meetings move to 5:30 p.m. the second Wednesdays of the month during the pandemic period and subject to review after the pandemic.
Excellent. And I suppose I could run more efficient meetings if I had done it at the same time, but for future reference. For those, we have the other item. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the proposed hiatus in the July meeting?
Just a question, is there another hiatus in December also, or is that a separate?
No, we do not have a December recess.
Okay. That's fine then.
No public comments, and then we've gotten our questions out, sorry there. And with that, is there a motion? Director Abikoga?
I'll make the motion to take the July meeting as a hiatus.
Thank you. And a second by Director Flagor?
Yes.
May we have a roll call, please?
Thank you. Chair Gibbons,
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson,
Yes.
Flagger,
Yes.
Elahi,
Yes.
Abikoga.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously to recommend the board consider a summer recess in July 2021, and this will also be for the executive committee.
Well, I have to personally thank you all because I worked really hard to get my council to take a July break.
Good for you.
So we are now at item number 6. This is the March rate update and changes. And we have a discussion from our Don Bray. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. All right, good morning, directors. It might feel like Groundhog Day, talking about rate changes again. We, of course, had a major rate change as of the start of January, but we knew at that time that we were going to be looking at another rate change as of March. So that timing has arrived. You know, the next slide, please. We'd like to preview with you the recommendation that we would bring to the board in March or in February for the March rate change. And what that recommendation is that we adjust rates to maintain our 1% discount relative to PG&E. And there are some trade-offs here. If we don't adjust rates, we're going to be in a position where our rates will actually be higher than PG&E's as of the start of March. If we do make this adjustment and maintain the 1% discount, we will impact our contribution to reserves. So we'll talk through the numbers in the presentation here, and just want to make sure that you have a full understanding of what this is about. Okay, next slide. So our original operating assumptions in the left-hand column in our budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 were that we would see a significant increase in the PCIA right out of the chute in October of last year, up to 4.8 cents, and then that it would ratchet back to 3.7 cents in January. And if you look at that over the balance of the year, that's about a 25% increase for the year. We expected that PG&E generation rates would remain flat. And so in the budget, we assumed that we would move to this 1% discount to help absorb the impact of that PCI change. Now, on the right-hand column is what's happened in reality. That change in the PCIA was actually delayed. It was delayed until January, and it went up to 4.25 cents, so not quite as high. But now it's going up again to 4.59 cents, and it's going to stay there for the balance of the year, beginning in March. And if we look at what that means over the course of a 12-month year, sort of annualized, that actually represents a 31% increase in the PCIA versus the 25% that we'd anticipated in the budget. So, a negative impact to us budget-wise. And similarly, on the generation rate side, we had assumed that rates would stay flat for the year, but what we're seeing is a decrease over the year, even with a slight increase in March of about 2%, again, versus the plan. So as planned, we did make that reduction in our discount rate from 4% to 1% in January, and now we have to contemplate, what to do with this latest round of changes to the PCA up to 4.59 cents, and actually a slight increase in PG&E's gen rate. So next slide. If you found all of those numbers dizzying, we endeavored to make a graphical portrayal of this, which maybe is a little easier to understand. So the left-hand column is where we are right now. Our generation rate plus the current PCIA leaves us with a 1% discount relative to PG&E's current generation rate. As of March, PG&E's generation rate is going to go up just a little bit. It's going to go up by about 1.8%, but the PCIA is going up by 8%. So if we leave our generation rates where they are, that's the middle column, it's either the same as they are in January. With the increase in the PCA, what our customers pay will now be more than PG&E's generation rate in March. So what we're suggesting is that we adjust our generation rate down to reestablish that 1% discount relative to PG&E. Okay, next slide. So what this does, if we maintain this 1% discount, that right-hand column, is that it's going to lower our generation rates by about 2.3%, and that lowers our contribution to reserves for the balance of this year by about $4 million. And again, if we do nothing, then our rates will be at a premium of about 1.3% to PG&E, and will likely result in opt-outs among our customers and our customers paying more. If we limit the increase by maintaining this 1% discount, the average residential customer will see an increase of about 94 cents a month in their bill, relative to if we do nothing, they would see an increase of about $1.67. So again, this is for the average residential customer, and we'd see similar types of math for commercial customers and the like. They'd be paying paying more, probably 50% more, 50 to 60% more, if we don't take this action in terms of that increase. If we look at the impact on our overall budget for the year, it's $4 million in the context of a currently projected year-end reserve of about 146 million. So if we take this action, we would be at 146 at the end of the year. If we don't take the action and have our rates go higher than PG&E, of course, we make more revenue and our reserve balance would look more like 150 million for the year. So that's the net in terms of the overall impact. Next slide, please. So bringing it back, our recommendation is that we adjust our rates so that we stay at that 1% discount. And that 1% discount, of course, was established by the board in December and effective as of January. So consistent with where we are now. It does mean that there would be a $4 million negative impact to our contribution to reserves, but it keeps us certainly in a competitive position rate-wise and doesn't pass along the rate impact nearly as much to our customers. So I'd like your thoughts on that. We also are wondering if this could be a consent item. Basically, we'd be continuing the 1% pricing policy, or whether you think this is something that should be on the full agenda. And we'll open it up for questions. I don't know, Girish or Amrit, if you have any additional comments, maybe before we do that.
No, we'll just wait for questions.
You want to do questions first? Yes, Director Tyson.
Thank you for the presentation. I heard you mention that with the change, the reserve at the year end would be 146 million, with the increase would be 150. What was it at the start of the year? I'm just wondering, we're still gaining, just slower? Can you tell me that number? And by the way, I wasn't expecting NISA to be back. I thought NISA had you have to leave at 12:10, and I was supposed to communicate that with Chair Gibbons, but she's back.
Okay.
So no, Girish or Amrit, if you want to handle the budget question.
Start with this. So Amrit, would you want to answer this?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the September, just trying to figure out where we ended September.
Yeah, so while you're looking at it, maybe I'll give the high level one is we're essentially going to go into the red. So when we started the year, we had projected the contribution to reserve would be about $8 million. This will reduce the contribution by 4. But I want to be very clear that there are other impacts to the budget, right? So for example, overall revenues are down, and then power costs have gone up. So in next month, we'll actually show you the net of where the reserves are going to end up. But, we wanted to parse this out specifically because there is a timing issue here, because PG&E's rates are going to go into effect March 1 or very soon after. So we want to follow that, because if we don't follow that as soon as possible, we could be going through a period where our customer rates are higher than PG&E's. So we are going from, so there are 2 things we're talking about. One will be answered more accurately at the next month's meeting, which is what is the projection for end of year reserve. But there's a lot more things that go into that, because we have to net out costs and expenses, costs and revenues. Because this is purely on a revenue side, we'll be needing to change that. At least that's our recommendation. Sorry, Amrit, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, so September, we ended up with cash on hand around close to 170 million. So going forward, as we discussed, the PCIA increase is going to erode that margin.
So, Amrit, if I may, I think we have a diagram that can be presented in this discussion that shows the low reserves, the median reserves, and the high reserves, and how we're tracking on that. And
Yeah.
I think that that is the diagram that would be the most communicative to Director Tyson and the rest of the board members, so that we have been above the median point, I believe. And does this take us below that? So I think that would be an easy, direct source of information to answer that.
Yeah, we will present that in March. And the reserve, the target is 180 days and the maximum is 270 days. With 146 million projected, we will be about 205 days. So about 75% of our max range.
Great, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And I can come back to Director Tyson, but Director Flygar, is there anything quickly that you'd like before you need to leave?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think Girish answered my financial reserve question, because following up on George's, it's a bigger discussion. Like, this is just a small piece of what would contribute to the bigger discussion. I don't think it should be a consent item. I actually think this should be a discussion item. Even though I may ultimately support it, I do think it should be a discussion item. Thanks for allowing me to speak early, Chair. And with that, I do have to go. So thank you. See you all soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And coming back to Director Tyson, apologize for
And so, oh no, you answered my question fine. In effect, what I was thinking is, if we're still increasing, but at a slower pace, it's much easier sort of discussion. What I've heard here today is there's enough sort of moving parts, and we're seeing what sounded like a fairly substantial decrease from the 100. If I heard 170 million in September, if I heard that, that would be kind of a big reduction. And so then I would recommend that we do make it a discussion item and provide those charts that we were just talking about.
Good. Thank you. And Director Abikoga?
Thank you. Yes, I know I was leaning towards making it consent if we're going to have a larger discussion in March, but in light of the fact that we have a lot of new board members, I think it might be worthwhile this probably will be the first iteration of rate changes that they've been through, so it might be worth going through the process and making it a discussion item.
And I I agree that having a presentation is a good idea for that reason. But also, I think there's an excellent graphic story to be told that will be very helpful when we have the more detailed discussion in March. Director Elahi, did you have a question? Or are you okay?
Yeah. The question I have is whether this is just a this year event, or you expect the same issue coming up every year or next year and the year after that, because we have a hit on the reserve of 4 million this year, plus other deficits that may come up because of operating revenue and expense issues, and whether you're projecting that to also be an issue next year, and are we going to be dipping into a reserve? Right now we are dipping into not building reserves as much as you want, but are we going to start? Will we start to go in the other direction, where the reserves are impacted further, and should you be starting looking at other things to increase revenue or decrease expenses also? And maybe that's a discussion item, but that's probably something that needs to be addressed.
So a couple of things. We will actually be taking money out of reserves. So it's not just reducing the contribution to reserves. With this recommendation, we'll actually be taking some money out of reserves. So there will be a net reduction just with this action. As far as your broader question of will this happen next year and the year after, I can't tell you with any certainty that it won't happen. And in fact, this is the essence of our business, right? So when you think about our business has volatility embedded in power prices. And so in any one year, you may have costs going up a lot more than the revenues you're getting. That's why we build reserves, to be kind of like have a shock absorber. Also on the regulatory side, right? So that's why the PCIA is such a big deal for us to get this black box of the PCIA kind of opened up and have more certainty on how we can forecast those numbers. Across Northern California, every CCA is going and having this issue, right? It's hitting them equally or even worse because not everyone has the kind of reserves that we have. So it just has to do, sorry, Javed, but it just has to do with the uncertainty of market prices that I can't tell you that it won't happen next year. But I can also tell you that in the longer run, so longer run, even mid-run, the PCIA will be coming down when the nuclear unit Diablo gets out of PG&E's portfolio in 2024 and 25. That's going to remove about 1 to 1.2 cents out of the PCIA. So that's the basic, the PCIA itself will go down. But year to year, the PCIA is going to depend on what the market prices are. But we don't have that transparency of how the black box is managed for us to come out with a very confident forecast. But I can tell you that it is a big deal for all of us at CCA Land, and we are investing money in coming up with the best forecast we can.
Yeah, understood. And you guys are doing a great job. I mean, building up this kind of reserve shows that this is a really, very well run operation. I just want to look at it as any business. When you're expecting a deficit coming up in the future, you also look at how you can expand your revenue and where you need to cut your expenses. So there should be some thought on given to that direction also, because those things are under our control. The PCIA is clearly not quite under our control.
Thank you, Javed. That's a really good segue. This group, when we're all together in one room with staff and have been squeezed into one room with staff, it's always been a dynamic discussion because the goal of this group is, one, to understand the issue and to help give direction and consensus to staff. But part of that process is we do, staff values our critiques. Should we show this kind of a slide? Should we have this kind of a discussion? So in this case, I would suggest that it does need to go as an agenda item, but I would recommend that conversation here, we split it into two parts and actually have a discussion on the reserve to start with, so that there's an understanding that there is a reserve. Okay, so and then when you talk about the rates, and then you can understand the rates decision in two ways. One is it holding policy to stay below PG&E and the 1%, and then what that decision would mean in terms of the reserves. So we always try and help staff figure out what's the right story to tell. And Director Elahi's comment, it would be very important to say in the beginning, these are our reserves, this is why they're here. And that this year, we're going to be making this decision, with this direction, if the board supports staff's recommendation to hold the policy, this is the impact on reserves. And then you can also say going forward, just what Girish just said, which is we cannot tell certain things, but we know other things. So you kind of tell the right story. So that would be my feedback to staff. Any other thoughts? Director Tyson.
I was just going to start blurting. That it's funny. I think that 1% reduction is an important kind of stake in the ground, and it's a little bit more psychological than really financial. But it's more like the 10-cent bags at the grocery store that I've never bought. It's kind of like that, to just say this is where we are. I think that's an important place to be.
Totally well said. And anyway, this group has always been informal, so please feel free.
I agree with you, Vice Chair. Over the years, I've I think, well, 1% not a big deal, but it actually seems to have been a big selling point for our organization, and so yes, it's probably psychological, but to be able to continue to say that, we're lower than PG&E rates, I think really does make a difference. So I think it's worth us continuing that.
Yeah, that's an important part of the story.
And it'll be great if we can get it back to 4% below PG&E, so it's
Well, we definitely want the good old days. Okay. Anything else? Does staff have any questions?
I'm just going to say that we'll do the best we can on the reserves. We'll definitely have a chart on reserves, but also I just want to caveat a little bit, and maybe Amrit can add to it. We'll have a better sense of all the different flows of numbers at the March board meeting. So whatever we present so we're going to work on it, just literally this afternoon so we can post it tomorrow. It's going to be a little bit of an estimate because, yeah, so.
I mean, that's fine. Again, I come back to, you're telling a story.
Yep.
You heard each of us bring up a different aspect of the story.
Okay.
And it's perfectly fine to say this is a moment in time picture, and there will be much more information in March. The board hopefully will be pretty receptive to that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Is that the end of the topics? Anyone have anything that they'd like to say?
Sorry, if I may. So I will frame our staff report as saying that the executive committee supported this recommendation. Yes.
I would say yes. Everyone agreeing, I'm seeing consensus. And Director Elahi, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And but it's not a consensus item, so it'll be up for discussion.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But just consensus among us.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I assume the finance committee is also going to look at it.
No.
As far as the
There is, we don't have a finance committee yet.
Yeah, I understand, but at some point. All right.
No, we are actually taking this to the Wednesday meeting.
Okay.
Where we would want approval. So this gets to the point of we need to get this done so that we can have it implemented March 1. And the finance committee will be chartered only on February 10th.
Right,
so we need approval from the board.
Yeah, so the finance committee, maybe we can look at what other sources of revenue are there.
Exactly.
Expenses are there. Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Exactly.
All right. Well, well done, everyone. And thank you, staff, as always. And we will see you sooner than later.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.